מזמור לדוד. אדוני רואי לא אחסר, ונודה שירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינהלני. נפשי ישובב ינחני, במעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא ירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, דשנת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He has me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He guides me on path of righteousness. He revives my soul for the sake of his glory. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table in sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. Dear friends, we're here to honor the memory of our dear member, Marty LuKacher. We'll have members of the family speaking, beginning with his oldest son, Aaron.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time and to honor my father. For those online as well, I'm glad you're listening in. Before I start, I'd like to put this hat on. Some of you who know my father, this was his favorite hat. I always saw him with this. And one thing I'm missing is the cigar, which I would have brought, but I think the temple rules and the fire marshal would prohibit that. As many of you know, and many of you in attendance here were here at our mom's passing about 5 years ago. And with our dad's passing, technically my brothers and I are now orphans. But that being said, I think we can all be extremely, as brothers and family and extended members, and those of you who knew my father, can be extremely proud of the legacy he left us. Among these, all of his sons married Jewish women, and that was maintaining cultural values and Yiddishkeit was among his top priorities. Those of you who knew him as a member of Temple Bethel, since he came here in 1964, he was a presence and a fixture, always sitting in the back row there. And anyone who sits in that seat will probably be maybe ejected for sitting in a seat that was meant for him. And Les, where's Les? Les, that was your seat as well, right next to him in the back room. Another part is that with regard to marrying all Jewish women, he's had so far, to my knowledge, 6 grandchildren and an equal number of great-grandchildren. His newest one is Anna's and Paul's child, Jacob, in the back of the room, who was born a little over 3 months ago. One thing that's a little known fact is that Mom and Dad were extremely relieved when I got married because they suspected I never would be. So I have to thank my wife yet again for almost 37 years of marriage, sticking with me through this. So you made my parents very happy and exceptionally, as I said, relieved. When I was a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, I actually asked my mom how she came to decide to marry my father. And what she said was, I thought he would make a good father. And I can say that over the last, certainly my entire life, obviously, and those of my brothers, that prediction was realized over and over again. He was a phenomenal father. None of us ever had to wonder whether we would be supported, either emotionally or financially. It never was an issue. It never came up. He was amazing. He was amazing in that regard. Those of you who are friends were recipients of that level of generosity over and over again. He was, he was very high. He told us as children to aim high in our aspirations. For me, I was the disappointment in the family because I went into medicine and research instead of law. But that's okay. It apparently skipped a generation with our daughter, or my daughter, who went into patent law and followed his steps, and of course Kenny, who a number of you know, and forgive me, I call him Kenny. That's how I called him as a child, and I can't get away from that one. But Kenny actually took the hit for me and went into law, so he relieved me of that obligation, fortunately. The other thing I would say is that my dad always loved learning. And that was something he instilled in us. He said he went into patent law because patent law gave him the opportunity to learn new things all the time. And I can honestly say that for I think all of his progeny, both his certainly for his children, for us as his sons, and for his grandchildren, all of us are committed to education, learning, bettering ourselves, whether we go into professional and other non-professional avenues of our lives. That is paramount. Maintaining Jewish values and learning all the time. They go hand in hand for us. The other thing that I should just mention is that for those of you, my father, he may not have been the most politically correct individual on the planet, but he was certainly among the most opinionated. And I would actually add the caution that it's okay to be opinionated if you actually have done your homework first. I can't say my father actually done the homework work. However, he often used his Jedi lawyer mind tricks to make it appear as if he did. So there was never an issue there was never a question I could ask him that he couldn't answer. He was Wikipedia before there was an internet. And I accepted it as truth because of the way he said it. And that was a talent of his. And I'm sure many of you were recipients of that as well. In fact, I could actually say that sometimes I catch myself doing the same thing, and my wife is quick to bring up, you're acting just like your father, which I take as a compliment, but I have a feeling that wasn't how it was intended. And then the last thing I should say, and I think Russ may have remembered this, having attended at least one of our Seders over the years, is that my father ran the Seders as he always did, with nearly fully corrupted Hebrew, a lack of sense of melody, and by his own admission, he was tone deaf, and we can all relate to that one. And I can actually say, as part of his legacy, I'd like to think I'm not entirely tone deaf, but I sort of do the same thing when I run our Seders. And luckily for our son who went to Solomon Schechter's school, he has the wherewithal to correct me along the way, so I don't go too far astray. So just to end, my dad led a productive, impactful, and amazingly colorful life. His legacy lives on not just in us, but certainly all in attendance here and those online. He will definitely not be forgotten for at least as long as any of us are here. And I can honestly say that I'm forever grateful that I had him as my father.
Shkar, Aaron. We now call upon Joel to speak.
that better? Hi. My brothers asked me to keep this short. My brother told me just say ditto and walk away, but I can't do that. So we'll see how this goes. I'm Joel LuKacher. I'm the middle son. I'm the one from Florida. I wrote down some thoughts and experiences I had with my dad that I think some of you might remember about him. Martin LuKacher was a man of the 1950s. He wasn't a hugger. He didn't say I love you, but you know he did by how he lived. If you met my dad in his prime years, you'd probably be intimidated by his powerful personality. He was like a huge bear. My father was had a bigger than life personality. He always saw himself as large and in charge. But if you got to know him, you discovered he was more like a worn teddy bear. And he didn't suffer fools well. And pardon me for being blue, but if he disagreed with you or what you were doing, he would say something like, "Listen, schmuck, you're wrong. Do what I tell you." That would be my dad, and most of the time he would be right. He was a very proud professional man, a husband, a father, and a community leader. He was the head of the patent law department at General Dynamics in Rochester with top security clearance. You may not have known that. He worked on military projects like missiles and radar systems and nuclear submarines, highly technical things. He was very proud of his Navy submarines. He gave me a model kit of one of his submarines when I was about 7 years old. And I have a favorite photo of my father with a huge, proud smile of me holding his submarine. My brothers and I remember his collection of General Dynamics submarine tie clips. He wore it daily for many years, and that was his fashion statement. And that's about the most fashionable my father ever actually was. He loved Temple Bethel. When we moved to Rochester in the early 1960s, he bought a house because it was a very short walk to shul. Matter of fact, it was across the street from Rabbi Karp. His favorite Shabbat routine was to get to services early, sneak out, I think around the Haftorah for Kiddush Club, have a few schnapses, pack his pockets with Kiddush cookies, and go home to sleep away the afternoon. Marty was a creature of habit at Bethel. He always sat in the same seat, right over there, way in the back left corner, so much so that before the renovation, the seat was worn out with the indentation of his tush. No one else could sit in that seat but him. It was molded to him. The only thing he loved more than his family and faith was his cigars. I remember as a child riding with him in his red VW Beetle with the crank windows, no radio, no frills. We were coming home from the old downtown JCC in a blinding snowstorm. Could not see where he was going, and he was puffing on the cigar like a chimney with the windows rolled up. I couldn't breathe, and if I opened the windows, I couldn't see. It was a no-win situation, and that is one of my dearest memories of my father. My father might get angry and frustrated at things like repairing home plumbing by himself, where he would use lots of colorful language when the toilet would not succumb to his wishes. But he never got mad at me or my brothers. And I'll tell you a crazy story, true. One day when I think I was about 11, I was a bit of a practical joker. I took one of his good cigars and inserted 6 exploding cigarette loads into the center of them. And it was a warm, sunny afternoon. Dad was relaxing in the backyard on his lawn chair, reading the Sunday paper, being very relaxed. And I went into the kitchen as he lit up his cigar. Next thing I heard, it's a little blurry, was a loud bang, and my father rushing in after me, chasing me all the way up. I ran as fast as I could, got in the door, locked it, heard him bang on the door, and I didn't dare open that door for hours because I did not want to see my father's anger. I was petrified of my father. When I came out a few hours later, He simply looked at me sideways and chuckled, almost as though the joke was on me. Dad was crushed after Mom left us 6 years ago. His memory was failing, and he needed the care of the Jewish home, which did a wonderful job. The huge, tough bear became a more simple man, often asking, "What's going on here?" and for help with the simple things. He loved my brothers, and I would visit him as often as I could, and so would they. My visits were usually longer because I'm from Florida. I would say 5 to 7 days, and I would dedicate all my time to him. I was there to make him happy. We would go out to his favorite restaurants, and we would sneak off campus to have a few cigars, which was his favorite thing to do. There was only one time, actually there's only 2 times I remember, maybe 3 times I saw my father cry. When his father died, when my mother died, and when I would leave to go home. We both actually cried. I would tell my father, "I love you." And the best he could say was, "Me too." I'm glad I got here in time while he was still with us. I got to tell him I love you one more time. And I know he knew that he loved me too.
Thank you. Joe, we now call upon Ken to speak.
It's first so good to see so many old friends here. It's been a while since I've seen a lot of you. My dad would be very proud that you made it here. So thank you for coming, and for those who were streaming, thank you for watching. First of all, an ancillary to my brother's cigars loads. That wasn't the only cigar that he put loads in. He put it in a few more. And my dad was with the client. And he offered a cigar to my client. And he took one himself. And he lit them up. And guess what happened? Fortunately, his exploded, and not the client's. Now, my brother never got in trouble for that. At least I didn't know he did. I was, what, this high? But it was one of the many things that my brother did. When growing up, he was a practical joker. And my dad never always appreciated his sense of humor. But now back to what I came here to talk about, which was my dad. Probably, unlike my brothers, I had the most experience with him. I had the benefit of his knowledge and his time. I moved back to Rochester in '94. And I basically actually moved in with my parents for like 6 months until I bought a house. But I got to know my dad like no one else did, I think. At least my brother is from a standpoint of how he was later in life. And he was quite a mensch. So he was a great guy to know. But I want to talk to you that there are many facets of my dad's personality. Some of you know probably one or two. I'm just going to share a few of them. And I'm trying not to go over the same things that my brother said, because I don't want to be repetitive and make this too long. The first facet, at least as to my mom, that she put it, he was a character. He always explained whenever he would embarrass her in front of other people, "Oh, he's just a character. Don't worry about him. He doesn't mean bad." And he didn't. He just liked to get attention sometimes and make my mom squirm just a little bit. But she always forgave him, eventually. Usually sometimes it only took a day or so. Being a character, that was a seat in the back. That's not the same seat, obviously, because they redecorated this place very nicely. And he sat next to his friends. Now, he had lots of friends. Most of them have passed, but one has not. That's Leslie Krieger. And Leslie and him would talk all the time. I mean, he sat in back of Debbie Zager, who's here, of course, her whole family. And at the beginning, people would say, shh, shh, don't talk. Okay, Debbie never minded. She understood my dad. He didn't mean bad. It was just his only time to socialize with his best friends. And so he did. But the other people all moved to the other side of the sanctuary. And they just stared at my dad. My dad just said, if they want to move, fine. He's going to keep talking to Leslie. And they talked about everything, even through some sermons. I'll say sorry for him in advance. And while Cantor Lubitz, I heard Cantor Lubitz is here somewhere. Well, Cantor Lubitz was davening. I don't know if you heard him in the back there sometimes. Did you hear him? Did it bother you sometimes? But he sometimes just was loud, especially when they told jokes to each other, Leslie and him. But it was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed sitting next to them, and sometimes I sat between them just so I can enjoy their colorful language between the two of them. Now, my phone died. The next thing I want to talk about, he had schnapps with Finkelstein. I don't know where Finkelstein is, but he would leave the service and take in the schnapps. They had a secret cabinet in the kitchen. And when I was a little kid, he would give me some. And I think, Aaron and Joel, did you get the schnapps? Sometimes? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I got the benefit of that. And we would be happy through the second half of Lubitz's service. And the high holidays. What was his favorite thing to do? Was wear that yellow kippah, stand at the door and tell all the kids to be quiet. And he did it. And that foyer was quiet. And no one could come through that door if people were standing, ever. And if they did, he would track them down and give them a talk. And he did. But he always meant well. He was never mean. It was a learning experience. And he taught. He was a member of the Minion Club. So I think some of the Minion Club is here. Every morning they would get together and do the Minion, put on their he'd put on his tefillin. By the way, he put on his tefillin every day. For those who know that, he would, in the kitchen, he would do it. If not, he would do it with the Minion, he would do it. And he loved the Minion. He loved the breakfasts after the Minion. What was that, the Dollar Minion Club? A great deal. And when he brought the bagels, he had to go to Brownstein's. Fortunately, Brownstein's not here anymore. But I think you can still get them wholesale. He just loved his lox and cream cheese, and poof. And he would bring them home. So I'd get the benefit of it. So we would have bagels for a week. And my mom never liked it because, my dad was a little on the heavy side, just a little bit. And he loved to, enjoy the Kiddush. I don't know if anybody saw his pockets after he left here, but they were full. I heard a story from one of my brothers. I didn't hear it here. Here was one of the little kids was getting in trouble for was eating things to the Kiddush. He saw it, and so what he did is he would take something off the Kiddush table and give it to the child anyway, just because that was the type of guy. He did not want to see anybody be upset or unhappy. And the Kiddush lunches, the ones that came when Beach Rock came, oh, he loved them. The best. He enjoyed that. So thank you, Debbie, for running those luncheons every week now. Before they were only like once every 6 months. Now it's great. And guys, you can come here Saturday, those are in Rochester, enjoy them. If you want to come for the Kiddush. Next thing, he was as a professional. Aaron touched on this. He was a lawyer. He built a solo practice in the 1970s from nothing. When General Dynamics moved away from Rochester, he said he loved this community, and part of his love was this place, Temple Bethel. He just loved Temple Bethel, and he loved being a big macher here. In the 1970s, 1980s, he was a big macher here. Most of his friends have passed, but he, through all the rabbis, he lasted. Let's see. He became the guy in the 1980s. He became the guy to go for patent law and intellectual property law. Journalists would seek him out. I don't know. We have tapes of him talking to journalists. And old VCR, I have VCR tapes. And anybody know Eddie Meath? Eddie Meath? He was the head of the Rochester Patent Law Association. In fact, he helped found the Rochester Patent Law Association. I don't know if anybody's here from who remembers that. And so Eddie Meath would come on in the morning and have guests at 6:30. And I got up early and watched Eddie Meath and my dad there with, they didn't have to telegraph. It was just pictures of patents and inventions to talk about Alexander Graham Bell, the elevator, anything. And what was his point? He was building a civil practice. He was trying to get clients. It worked. His business grew so much that he went into association with Nixon, Hargate, Stephens and Doyle, now Nixon Peabody, and he grew their patent department from scratch. When he left, I don't know how many, 10 lawyers? A lot, most of them left, but he just grew. He trained almost all the patent attorneys who worked there in late 1980s and late 1990s. They turned to him. Again, my phone keeps checking out. Let's see. He always told his clients his thoughts. Now, that was not always a good thing, but he always told him that if the invention was patentable, he was a patent attorney, he did his research, he said it was patentable. They loved him for that. Or the hard talks with the clients when their dream invention was not. No one wants to hear that they can't get a patent on it because someone had done it before. You can only get a patent if no one's done that before, or it's not obvious. Or the worst case is, it might be patentable, but why would anybody buy this thing? So why invest in a patent if no one's ever going to buy it? And he had to be convinced. And when he was convinced, he took the client. And some of these clients, he made them rich. Anybody here, Hydroacoustics, Redcom, Ultrafab? He started it. Those companies from scratch, from a single patent. It was him. As a husband, he tried to manage the very particular personality of my mom, and he failed most of the time. He wouldn't follow her ways of doing things. I think everybody who knows their relationship, it was sometimes, they were very open with their feelings. And they do it were people around or not. But it was fun to watch them. People said it was like a sitcom, how they talked to each other. They sometimes mentioned that they could write a script based on my mother's and father's discourse. But that would be funny to watch. He also was a tobacco aficionado. His favorite activity was a good cigar, sitting outside in a lawn chair, staying out of my mom's way. I don't know if anybody ever came over to the house. He was there in the front with a cigar and just puffing away at it. And not just one, 2, 3. He would offer one to you. And he just enjoyed going through a cigar. As a parent, his generosity was without any bounds. So long as you can show the obvious of the value of whatever you wanted as a kid, Aaron or Joel or me, if you could show that was worth it, he'd bought it. He bought a ham radio for my brother. Now my mom said, fine. They both did it together. But if he said no, it wouldn't have happened. But unless my mom gave the money otherwise. But he bought a ham radio. He bought this real expensive microscope. Remember that microscope? Dad made sure that you had that microscope. He didn't buy it. No. Well, he still worked for it, in some degree. And he also was. My brother had a series of ventures, and my brother would have to convince my father of the benefit of investing in whatever that venture was. You had lots of ventures over time, and my dad wanted to help you with your ventures. You don't remember all the ventures you had? Okay. Anyway, he was very generous with my brothers, and if he didn't get, and if he disagreed with my brothers, my mom would help always with that. And he was very generous with me, prominently with my career. Without him, I probably wouldn't be doing what I do. As you know, I went to electrical engineering. He was an electrical engineer. I became a lawyer. Patent lawyer. He was a patent lawyer. I did not want to become a lawyer. I wanted to be an engineer, But he convinced me later in life to do it, and I did it on my own, and then told him afterwards that I was going to law school, and he was very happy with that. He mentored me harder than anybody else he ever trained. He trained a lot of people, but with me, he would rip apart my stuff to the point where it made me cry. He was a tough guy on me, but without it, I wouldn't have succeeded. So I have to thank him for all those lessons that he taught me. If he didn't, I wouldn't have done as well as at least I think I've done. And he helped me establish a firm, and many of his clients transitioned, and we started. We have some of the people who worked with him are here, and they transitioned to me because his clients admired him, and they grew to trust him almost implicitly. If Marty said it was okay, and it wasn't just with patent law, it was with wills, it was with real estate. He became an expert on everything, and as Aaron said, if he wasn't, he sounded like one, and people just trusted him. I took trips to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office with him in Washington, D.C., and he argued with examiners in front of me, and I would try to help, but really he did all the work. But he taught me how to talk to other people. He taught me how to talk to examiners, how to talk to clients. Without him, I wouldn't have succeeded. Again, I owe a lot to that man there. And also, he was a knowledgeable base to everybody. He was very resistant to change. Especially in the synagogue, he was resistant to change. He was also resistant at home. He wouldn't get an automatic garage door opener. He was the last person on the block to get one. My mom insisted. When he had a computer, he made me take it out of the house. This was the 1980s. I bought a computer saying it was for my mom, but it really was for him, and he let it sit there and gather dust. But eventually, he got curious and started learning about it, and he became an avid email person, and he really enjoyed it. He saw the value of it, but it took him time to turn around. Okay, we're getting to the end. The last few years, the past 6 years, since he officially retired from my practice in 2016, it's been very difficult for me. I witnessed weekly and daily how he was not the man that he was. He changed, and my mom tried to say he wasn't, but he was, and it was very difficult. A man who could figure out anything, he suddenly couldn't figure out how to use a remote. The phone, he couldn't drive anymore, which was very hard. He went to the JCC every day, and then he couldn't anymore. It was hard, and eventually, after my mom died, he went into the Jewish home. Last, I wanted to say that I also witnessed the last few moments he had on this earth. In the end, it was Friday. I recited the first line of the Shema, which is a Hebrew prayer. We say, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Echad, as I grasped his hand until he joined my mom, his wife Gloria, in Olam Haba. And that was hard. But I think he was not in a great place, and I hope he's in a better place now. I think he is. Again, I want to thank you all for being here, and he will be deeply and forever missed.
Thank you, Ken. Representing the grandchildren, I call upon Anna.
Jacob's going to join me. I didn't want to wake him up. So, as you've heard, I kind of followed in my grandfather's footsteps. I went to law school. But unlike him, I actually litigate patents. Though Grandpa, he always told me, he said, you first need to learn to write them, then you can litigate them. But I took classes. I actually went to the same school as my uncle and found my strength in litigating. I do remember when I was doing my internship at where I currently work in 2017 in Manhattan. I remember taking a break one day, and I went to the park, and I was giving Grandpa a call, telling him all about what I was doing. He was asking what clients we were representing. He was interested. He was interested in the litigation aspect of it. So I feel great to have had that connection with him. He was every time I called, he'd ask how work was, how patents were. And as you've heard, family was very important to him. When we used to live in Atlanta, he and Grandma would come down. They would visit and stay a while, so much that when Avi was born, Grandma and Grandpa stayed in our basement. They watched us when my parents went to the hospital, and they were there. When I was in preschool, I'm assuming he drove me to preschool, which I'm sure he enjoyed, though the preschool teachers did not enjoy that because he'd be smoking his cigar in the car, and apparently the preschool teacher said I smelled like a chimney, and I would come in. Well, Jacob, my son, never got to meet his great-grandfather in person. He did see him over FaceTime, actually quite recently, about a week ago. And according to my father, that was one of the only times he actually perked up. He was just lit up just seeing, he kept saying, "It's a baby, it's a baby." He was very excited. Hopefully he knew it was his great-grandson, but he was just very excited to have seen us. So it's just a testament to how his memory will be living on in his great-grandchildren, his grandchildren, sons, and through stories that we will all tell the next generation.
Thank you, Anna. I believe that most people live in a climate not of their making, that they are the product of outside circumstances, that they live in a society and are dominated by this prevailing spirit, its values, ambitions, and character. But here and there are people that are unique and different, that for a special reason they succeed in creating an atmosphere, an aura around them. And wherever they go, their presence is felt because they radiate a special influence on the rest of us. I often thought of Marty LuKacher being that person. From the moment I came to Temple Bethel and the ritual committee suggested that I put a rope around each side of the shul to get people inside, I learned that same day how I disappointed Marty LuKacher. It was the only time he left for home. He left the shul before Shabbos was over and with his pockets empty. Second encounter with Marty LuKacher is at Chazal Lubitz's class every Shabbat at 8:30. Not clear to me until today what they studied, but boy, they smelled the booze. That was just incredible. They were loaded. That was the way he began his Shabbos. That's the way he loved his Judaism. That was a mensch and his Yiddishkeit. He was brilliant. Joel told me last night, a brilliant attorney, brilliant in finding the right relationship with people. And for all the technical abilities that he had, and we heard his background in electronics, he cannot fix things at home. Couldn't do the toilets or the electrical things and anything. He was completely clueless. But He had a wife who was able to pick up the phone and call the plumber and call the electrician to save him. She was the one who would step in, be able to relieve him from the situation. And Ken told me last night that he was close to his dad when he was trying to fix things. He was an apprentice to him. And he would be close to him. Things would not go well. He would just pass him the tools, but he was getting all the aggravation from his dad. The brilliancy of attorney did not translate to other levels of life, but he was brilliant. I was told last night, I think Aaron told me, that if you were to go to the website of the U.S. Patent Office website, you will see about 560 patents to his name, 400 something, an enormous amount. That speaks to his intelligence, to the good attorney he was. But it was more than that, because he never overcharged his clients. He was a good attorney with an incredible Jewish heart and Jewish values. He felt he had to be honest and charge what was always the work he had done. Gloria and Marty were a very unique couple. You got a sense from the children. Basically, both were independent individuals. She had a very set ways of doing things. And Marty, being Marty, he sometimes purposely, he would not follow what his wife's instructions were. Case in point, when she asked him to go to the store and buy a specific type of rice, very specific, and he would come back home with the wrong kind of rice on purpose. Then Gloria would stick his index finger in his belly and say, "Listen to me." The dynamics was broken when Gloria passed away. And as we heard, he declined. But his Judaism helped him to keep things straight. Because Marty was one that after becoming bar mitzvah many years ago, 1943, 44, he put on tefillin. And he would put on tefillin every morning, except Shabbat and holidays. And Aaron, Joel, and Ken have memories of Marty half-dressed with his shirt, half-dressed undershirt, and with his tefillin on in the breakfast table at the same time watching the news and doing everything at once. That was incredible. The image of Leslie Krieger and Mary LuKacher speaking to a high volume out there is part of what Shul is all about. I think clergy, Chazal Lubitz and I, in truth, never really, it was what it was, because we knew that the friendship, being with someone after being alone for a whole week was very important. And it was part of the Muppet Show, part of Shul life. On Shabbat, it was known that he will be there throughout most of the service, sometimes in the sermon, sometimes he was not. But for sure, when Haftorah came in, he just went back for the schnapps and be with others to enjoy a little bit of a cookie and here and there and come back later on. Marty was affiliated with Temple Bethel for 70 years. That speaks about his sense of commitment. The grandchildren, as we heard, have great memories from being generous and paying for school, from being there in the most important moments, because he was family-oriented. and he wanted to be part of your lives. So whether it was financially, or with love, he was there for you. Ben has memories of that dynamism, the dynamic between his grandparents. He said it really came down to him being able to be the stubborn one, and her putting him in his place, telling him what he needs to do. I remember, said Ben, him stocking food in his pockets at temple as much as possible. He was always concerned about me, how I was doing in school. Are you healthy? Are you staying healthy? Are you making sure you're taking care of yourself? How are you doing in school? Are you doing well in school? How are your grades? Everything that could be beneficial, said Ben, to my long-term success. It was never about him. It was about his grandchildren, his family, and making sure that they were in a good place to be successful. He put a lot of money, a lot of help in me having my car in college and making sure that I could be the most successful person I could be. The quality of generosity we would like to stress in the life of Marty LuKacher. He gave money to causes and to people. But there had to be the understanding that it was anonymous. He did not want any attention drawn to him for being helpful to others. He was very concerned that he did what he did because that was the Jewish way. His children told me last night that perhaps Marty would have liked to be remembered above all as an honest person, an ethical Jew who did the right thing. He would like to be remembered because of his dedication to his family, his love for them, spanning all the way to the great-grandchildren, and his dedication to the Jewish community and to Temple Bethel. He will always be remembered as a mensch. Someone who valued what is being our 3,000-year tradition, the love for learning, who supported education and the need of others. The rabbis taught, live your life, that when you are dead, you will be missed. So live that loved ones may find in you an inspiration to goodness. So live that you will not be forgotten. Marty LuKacher lived by these Jewish principles. He put the family together. He imparted them with energy, intelligence, kindness. He guided them. He set the example, and he loved them. That should be what we remember from now on. And now we have to say farewell to you, dear friend. Dear Marty, you go to the realm beyond our vision. The love that you have enkindled in us with your love remains to brighten the darkness. It will ease the loneliness that now we feel. We know not what lies beyond, but we despair not. For here among us, in minds awakened by yours, in spirit uplifted by yours, in hearts gentled by yours, you live, and you shall continue to live. And thus we are assured of your immortality. To us who love and admire Marty LuKacher, to his grieving family, may these reflections bring a measure of consolation. תהא נשמתו צרורה בצרור החיים. May the soul of Moshe Leib ben Avraham Shammai Vechaya be bound up in the bonds of life eternal. And let us say all together, Amen. Kindly rise for the memorial prayer. El male rachamim shochen bamromim האמצע מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמת משה לייב בן אברהם שמאי וחיה שלח לעולמו בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו ענה בעל הרחמים אז תראהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר